All right, today we're going to dive into something pretty deep, something we've probably all felt at some point, that feeling of emptiness. We're going to look at it through the eyes of psychoanalyst Massimo Recalcati and what he calls the clinic of the void. Now, it's a complex idea, for sure, but stick with me, because getting it helps us understand something really fundamental about ourselves.
So, why do we feel empty? I mean, it's a universal question, isn't it? That nagging sense of a hole inside, a hollowness that you just can't seem to fill. But what is that feeling really? To get to the bottom of it, we have to go beyond just a simple definition and start with a very raw, very human story.
This is a quote from one of Recalcati's patients with anorexia, and it's chilling. Notice how she describes it. The void isn't an absence of something. For her, it's an overwhelming presence, so real that it erases everything else. This is the kind of absolute emptiness we need to wrap our heads around. So how do we solve this enigma? Well, Recalcati takes us into the extreme world of anorexia. And it's not because the void only exists there, not at all. It's because in its most severe forms, we see the logic of this emptiness pushed to its absolute, terrifying limit. It's an extreme case study that actually shines a light on a feeling we can all experience.
But hold on. Before we go any further, there's a really important distinction we have to make. Psychoanalysis tells us that not all emptiness is created equal. There's a massive difference between the normal, everyday kind of emptiness that can actually be good for us and the absolute void we just heard about.
And that brings us to the central idea of this entire explainer, the critical difference between what psychoanalysis calls lack and the void. Understanding this, well, it's the key to unlocking everything else. Okay, so let's break this down. On the one hand, you have lack. Think of lack as the engine of your life. It's that normal, healthy feeling that something's missing, and it's what pushes you to connect with other people, to chase a dream, to create something. It's a productive kind of empty, because it points you towards something else. But on the other hand, you have the void. And this is totally different. This isn't an engine, it's more like a black hole. It's an absolute emptiness that doesn't push you outward. Instead, it just pulls everything in, becoming the goal itself.
To put it simply, lack is what makes us human. It's that little hole in our being, that gap, that allows desire to even exist. We feel a lack, so we desire something, or someone, to fill that gap. It's the very foundation of our connection to the world around us.
Right, so if lack is the thing that pushes us toward life and connection, what on earth happens when a person's goal is no longer to fill the emptiness, but to actually worship it? To make the void itself the thing they're most passionate about? To understand that bizarre switch, we have to go back to anorexia.
And here, Recalcati makes another really sharp distinction. He shows us that even within the world of anorexia, this turn towards nothing can mean two radically different things. The motivation here is everything. The first nothing is actually a desperate, roundabout way of communicating. By saying no to food, the person is basically asking a question, like, do you love me or do you just love taking care of me? It's a strategic move to defend their own sense of desire. But the second nothing is the total opposite. It's not a call for love, it's a retreat from life itself. This is that drive toward a state of pure nothingness, what Recalcati calls that mineralization of the body, like turning into stone. It's an embrace of the void as the final answer.
This quote nails it. The rejection of food isn't just a simple no. It's a call, it's a message, and it's aimed at someone else, usually a parent or loved one. It's a coded way of asking, who am I to you really?
And the contrast here just couldn't be more stark. There's no message, there's no call for love. It's just a pure, raw drive toward annihilation. The goal isn't to get a reaction from the world, but to leave it entirely.
Now, this logic, this pull of the void, it's not just about eating disorders. Recalcati uses the same framework to understand things like addiction. And to do that, he gives us this powerful concept he calls anti-amour, or anti-love.
So what does he mean by anti-amour? You can think of it as short-circuiting desire. See, the normal path of love means you have to go out into the world and deal with all the messiness of another person. But in anti-amour, the person finds an object, a drug, a behavior, anything, that gives them satisfaction directly, cutting out the need for another human entirely. And you can see the two paths right here. The circuit of love moves from you outwards, towards another person, to find what you're looking for. It creates a social connection. But the circuit of anti-amour, it just bypasses all of that. You go straight to the object. It becomes this solitary, closed-off loop.
And this is really why this distinction is so important. The path of lack and love, yeah, it can be frustrating and difficult, but it's what builds our entire world of relationships and meaning. The path of the void and anti-more, on the other hand, it's a path of isolation that just dissolves those bonds, leaving you alone with your object.
So where does all this leave us? This whole journey into the void kind of forces us to ask a much bigger and maybe even scarier question. What even is ourself? And just how solid is it, really? To get at that question, we have to bring in one last big idea, the mirror stage. The theory goes that we aren't born with a built-in sense of a unified me. We actually discover who we are for the first time by seeing our reflection, either in a literal mirror or in the way our parents look at us. Our sense of self is first found outside of us. But this whole mirror moment is a complete double-edged sword. On the one side, it's a huge relief. You see this whole complete image and think, yes, that's me. It saves you from feeling like just a mess of disconnected parts. But on the other side, it's a threat. You realize that your identity isn't really yours. It's that image, that thing out there. Lacan says this has a mortal signification because it's our first clue that our self is fragile, it's external, and it's not nearly as solid as we'd like to think.
And this brings us right back to the beginning. If our entire sense of self is built on a reflection, on an image we find outside of ourselves, what happens when we look into that mirror, searching for who we are, and all that looks back is the void?